Welcome back to 15th Street Automotive. Today we're looking at a 2011 Ford F-150. We got another air conditioning blowing warm. This one here started blowing warm real fast. One day it worked great, the next day it didn't. That's typically not going to be a low refrigerant issue. That's typically going to be a component failure, maybe a clutch relay, or maybe a compressor failure. But we're going to get into this one and check it out. Alright, we're checking out this air conditioning on this F-150. Vent temp is 128. That's not very refreshing. It's a little cooler today in the shop. I think we're sitting at about 75 degrees in here right now. So that's on, if you look here, that's full cold. AC's on. Vent temp 123. So let's check the pressures on the 134A machine. Likely not going to be a low refrigerant problem, just because it worked one day and the next day it didn't. So let's check those pressures. Alright, so our static pressure is sitting about 110, so there's definitely refrigerant in there. Well, there's at least pressure in there. But like I said, when an AC system works one day and then doesn't work the next day, it's not usually a refrigerant loss problem. It's usually a component problem. So I'm going to start it up and see if we get any change on those pressures at all. You saw the temperature in the vent. It's not cool. So there's no change at all on these pressures. They're still, sitting right at 110. And you can see the compressor clutch is engaged and spinning. So there's no pressure at all. That almost has to be a compressor issue. Something broken inside that compressor is not allowing any pressure change at all. No high side. It's not pushing anything and it's not pulling anything. Uh-oh, look here. Here, let me pull you in closer. If you look there, the center of that clutch hub is not spinning. That's the actual crankshaft of the compressor. So the clutch is spinning, but if you see all that melted rubber plastic goo around the center of that hub, that's the connection for the clutch to the crankshaft of the compressor. So that clutch has just come apart, probably because the compressor's starting to come apart. That thing's going to require a compressor. Alright, so I'm going to turn the compressor bolt, which basically turns the shaft of the compressor. And that turns really easy. So it's not like the compressor is locked up. I can spin that with my fingers. So the compressor's not locked up, the clutch just failed. So the fact that the clutch isn't locked up means that we can just replace the compressor and the clutch, or possibly just the clutch if we can find that part. More than likely we'll end up doing the clutch and the compressor, but we won't need to do any of the external parts because it doesn't look like the compressor came apart. So we're going to put a compressor on this F-150. The compressor is in a position on the engine that it's almost impossible to get a good perspective with the camera. I'm going to take you along as best I can. Don't expect great cinematography on this thing. Trying to get a camera in there, trying to get just the tools in there is hard enough. Trying to do a camera, it's tough. So I'm gonna show you as best I can. Hopefully with the magic of editing, you'll be able to understand what I'm doing. But just know that there's no easy way to get a good perspective on this job. Very little room around the compressor for tools, and even less for a camera. So come along with me, we'll do the best we can. Okay, so the first step is taking the belt off. Now this is a stretch belt, so it's there's no tensioner on it. And they're really a pain in the butt. Not the best design, I don't think. So the way to get these off, there's tools that you can buy to do it, but you can do it with just a screwdriver and then a socket and ratchet. So I've already got it off, but if you take a screwdriver and put it up against the pulley of the compressor and the belt, and then turn the crank with a ratchet off the bolt there, you'll run the screwdriver up between the belt and the compressor, and then you can pry up and it'll force it out, and then as you're turning the crank over, it will force the belt off and it'll pop off. Putting it on is a whole nother thing. Dumb design, but it's the design we got. So I already took it off, but that's how I did it. Putting it back on, I'll show you how to do that in a second. Alright, next thing is we're going to take the two AC lines off, low side and the high side, 13mm nuts. I've already evac'd the system. I evac'd it when I was diagnosing it because I knew the customers were going to buy it. Pull those lines out of the way so we don't have to mess with them anymore. Alright, and there's a electrical connector here on the top. Pinch the bottom and it comes off. Alright, there's 3 bolts that hold that compressor to the block. You got the top one right here, 10mm. You got the back one that's right here, and then you've got a bottom one way down here. I don't know if you can see that one. So it's way down there. So we're going to take out the bottom one and then the back one, and do the top one last. That'll make it easier to get the compressor out. Okay, the bolts don't come out of the body of the compressor because they hit against the frame of the truck, so just leave them in the holes. And now the top one. Okay. And like all things Ford, it needs a little persuasion. Nothing a pry bar can't fix. Just like that. So here's the two compressors. Old one obviously, new one. So if you can see, this is kind of just melted. This is rubber right here. This is the clutch, and this is the hub for the crankshaft. Obviously the crankshaft is connected to that bolt. You can see where that rubber is melted there, and on this one it's nice and fresh. So this one compressor feels a lot nicer too. This one is pretty wore. So we'll take off these fittings. We're going to replace the washers on there and get it ready to transfer. Alright, I'm going to try and show you how to do this stretch belt here. So get the belt started on a crank. And you're just going to hold it on the compressor. There you go.
Uh-oh, kind of rolled off the other side. I think if you keep cranking and push this in, it'll go back on.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it. All right, the compressor's done. I've got it recharging behind me. It's pulling a vacuum on the system, make sure there's no leaks. We'll recharge it with a full charge, and then I'll bring it back in and show you the pressures that it's producing now. All right, so the system's been recharged with 1.5 pounds of 134A. You can see the numbers are just about textbook, 20 psi on the low, about 160 on the high. Compressor's turning good. The hub on the crankshaft is turning the way it's supposed to. Pressures are good. Outlet temperature is 47 degrees. Yep, nice and comfortable. This one's a fix. Thanks for watching.